Every army needs well-trained soldiers, and the British Army of the Edwardian era was determined to have the best. Training for regular infantry soldiers was conducted at depot battalions and took no less than 20 weeks to complete, despite only covering the very basics of drill, fieldcraft and physical fitness. During the war, much of this training would take place within the new army battalions, rather than at dedicated training units, although the course of training remained largely the same, albeit often with the addition of a musketry course. So, let's take a look at the syllabus of infantry recruit training as it was in 1914. The initial weeks of training were devoted to the development of a soldierly spirit. This involved the issue of uniform and equipment, and instruction in barrack and camp duties, hygiene, and the regulations and orders which would immediately affect the soldier. They were shown how to wear their uniform smartly, and even given lessons in military history designed to instill pride in being a soldier. Throughout the recruit programme, soldiers underwent a course of physical training, supervised by the Army gymnastic staff. This aimed to promote strength, endurance, and to train soldiers in crossing obstacles, all while carrying and using the rifle. They performed exercises to improve balance and strength, and undertook long route marches, cross-country runs, and assault courses. By the end of training, a soldier had to be able to run a mile in their boots and equipment without stopping or showing undue fatigue. No small challenge, as their uniform and equipment weighed upwards of 55 pounds. The official guidelines were that recruits at week 20 of training should not be marching for more than 6 hours per week. However, this limit was often greatly exceeded. The main bulk of training was simply described as Infantry Training Manual, chapters 2 to 5 inclusive. This consisted of individual, section, platoon and company drill, as well as basic extended order tactics and fieldcraft. This was where they learned the real job of soldiering. A typical fortnight midway through training might include 10 hours of drill to teach discipline and smartness, and another 10 hours of field exercises, where they learned how to look after themselves in the field and how to fight effectively, including instruction in the various types of tactics discussed in previous videos. After the second week of training, soldiers could be issued rifles and undergo elementary training in musketry. This meant learning to clean and look after the rifle, to aim correctly, and to judge distance. They learned the theory of rifle fire, however they rarely actually fired the weapon during this stage of training. Instead, they underwent a separate musketry course after joining their unit at the end of basic training. Training in night operations was an essential part of the training syllabus. Soldiers were taught how to improve their sight and hearing in the dark, and how to move quietly on the march and in extended order. Another important aspect of training was in the use of the entrenching implement and entrenching tool. This may seem obvious, but with practice, trenches could be dug much more quickly and efficiently. The final part of training was perhaps the most important: bayonet fighting. While many soldiers would not even have fired their rifle by this point, they still trained to use it in battle. After 20 weeks of training, recruits could then undergo an examination which would determine whether they had reached the required standard or not. Typically, they were examined by the depot or battalion commander, who assessed their military efficiency, and a medical officer, who determined whether they were physically fit enough to serve with the colours. The standards to be achieved were described in the 1914 Manual of Infantry Training as follows. The recruit must be able to turn out correctly in marching order and fit to take his place in the ranks of his company in close and extended order drill, carry out an ordinary route march in marching order, have completed his recruit gymnastic training, be sufficiently instructed in musketry and visual training to commence a recruit's course of musketry immediately after being dismissed recruit training, be sufficiently trained to take part in night operations, understand the principles of protection and his duties on guard or outpost, be able to use the entrenching implement and entrenching tools and understand the method of carrying tools, and be well grounded in bayonet fighting. Although this training was quite basic and took place over a reasonably long period, it was undoubtedly very hard. What is also clear, however, is that it worked. Although few in number, the British Expeditionary Force went to war in 1914 as one of the best trained armies in the world, and from Mons to the Marne proved their fitness, discipline, efficiency, and most certainly their soldierly spirit.